Primetime. Now from Los Angeles, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. Take a quick look around any American parking lot, and it's no surprise that the Ford Motor Company is the nation's second largest car manufacturer. But you may not know that making cars and trucks is not Ford's most profitable business. It's making loans, and not just car loans. And we've been hearing about some problems, so we asked Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace to investigate. Chris?
Diane, Henry Ford said his goal was to put America on wheels, to build a car for the great multitude. But when it comes to Ford's financial operation, we found a lot of customers who have been driven into debt. Ford makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year from personal and home equity loans. What they also have to show for it are allegations of forgery, kickbacks, and loans that people can never pay off. Philip White was moving up in Ford's financial empire. In less than 2 years, he'd made assistant manager in one of their Alabama offices, until his father took him aside.
He asked me one day, how can you look at yourself in the mirror when you know what you've done to these people?
White says he kept thinking about his father's question. A few months later, he quit.
I just got sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of the pressure and the just lying to people.
They have ripped off our community. They have stolen the wealth out of our neighborhoods.
A lot of people are getting fed up with Ford. In Atlanta, thousands packed a church to bear witness against the way they say Ford does business.
That's Ford Motor Company who has a better idea.
In Boston, some 60,000 people are part of a nationwide lawsuit, charging that Ford pays kickbacks to brokers who steer customers into more expensive loans. Ford says they just pay brokers for their services.
They eat you up and they spit you out.
This man is also going after Ford, Bruce Marks, a community activist who has pressured corporations to make available more than $1 billion in low-cost mortgages. He says Ford is no different than a loan shark. Ford is a loan shark?
Ford is absolutely a loan shark. Usury and exorbitant interest rates, very high fees, very aggressive collection practices, and a loan that you never get out from under. That's a loan shark by definition. That's what Ford does, and they're the largest ones.
But perhaps the worst things we heard about how Ford treats its customers came from inside the company, from former employees like Philip White.
Somebody would walk out with a $40,000 real estate loan at a 15% interest rate, paying 5 points. With insurance on it, we'd say, what a sucker. Cha-ching. We just made the company some money.
Otis and Cora Ivory of Atlanta have a loan like that. He lives on disability, she works part-time. But their house was almost paid for, until 2 years ago, when an independent broker called them and suggested they borrow against their home to pay off some debts. The broker took them to Ford, where they got a loan with 5 percentage points in fees, a 15% interest rate, and a life insurance policy they say they never asked for.
All he said was initial here, without even giving us a chance to see what we was initialing.
Mr. Ivory, how much do you know about finance and loans?
Not too much. I don't know about no balloon or nothing like that.
What he's talking about is that the Ivorys later discovered that on a $56,000 loan, they will pay more than $128,000 over 15 years. Then still owe one more so-called balloon payment of $47,000. Now they worry about losing the house they've owned for 25 years. What does this house mean to you?
It mean my life to me. It mean everything to me. This is my home.
There's nothing wrong with that loan.
Debbie Rosen, an executive vice president at Ford Consumer Finance, says the company did the Ivorys a service, consolidating all their debts into a lower monthly payment, just as they do for a lot of people.
We make loans to people in all walks of life, one loan at a time, face-to-face with each customer that we deal with.
Ford gave us a list of 5 happy customers, such as a psychiatrist in Nashville who didn't want his name used. He says Ford was a much-needed source of money, even though his loan was at more than 16%. Headquarters for Ford's consumer finance operations, known as the Associates, is here outside Dallas. Since Ford broke into this business in the mid-'80s, its companies have been among the fastest growing in the industry. Until now, Ford is one of the largest home equity lenders in the country. Ford currently holds mortgages on more than 350,000 homes, and last year made a record $857 million in profits. But Primetime's investigation raises serious questions about how they make those profits. Here's some of the things we found. Brokers who work with Ford often target low-income homeowners who may not have much money but have considerable equity in their houses.
Ford is the worst predatory lender in the country.
For 20 years, Bill Brennan of Atlanta's Legal Aid Society has been helping people who say they've been victimized by mortgage companies. He's calculated that more than 3/4 of Ford's loans in Atlanta are in mostly black neighborhoods.
I don't see them targeting these loans in bulk in rich, upper middle class white neighborhoods. I see them targeting them in lower income, primarily African American neighborhoods.
That's absolutely untrue. We make credit available to a broad range of people in all walks of life, to the working person who deserves access to credit.
And they're not performing a service, because if you talk to any of the homeowners that have these loans, you see what misery it's inflicted on their lives.
Brennan took us on a tour of neighborhoods that he says are gold to a finance company. The homes may not be fancy, but many are paid for. And he says independent brokers know that when they seek out customers.
What these guys do is they ride around looking for these neighborhoods, then they go to the deed room and start looking up the deeds to see when they bought the house, how much they paid for it, whether there's a mortgage on the house. They can compute what the balance is.
Once a customer gets a loan, Ford employees say they are pressured to pack it with as many extras as possible.
You wouldn't even tell them about it. I mean, you just breeze through it.
Philip White says he had to meet quotas in selling expensive extras, everything from cancer insurance to auto club memberships.
1 out of every 4 loans that you closed had to have some kind of extra attached to it.
Why would the associates want you to load these loans up with extras?
It was pure profit.
Especially profitable when Ford could add insurance to the loans. Ms. Rosen, doesn't Ford own the insurance company?
I can't answer that.
Isn't that a Ford company?
We do write our own insurance, but we also write insurance through other companies that we utilize as
Isn't
well.
most of your credit insurance through Ford?
Yes, it is.
Still, Rosen denies there are quotas in selling insurance or anything else.
They want insurance on every loan you do.
But this person, who worked for Ford for more than 10 years and doesn't want to be identified, tells a different story. She says she and her colleagues had to meet monthly quotas. This is not her real voice.
There was a tremendous amount of pressure on each employee in the office.
The whistleblowers say employees were so afraid of losing their jobs, some would do anything to put loans and extras on the books, even forgery. Did you ever sign a customer's name to a document?
Yes.
Without their knowledge?
Yes.
Why would you do that?
I was told to. There was always a designated forger.
Excuse me?
A designated forger in the office.
White says he knew of about 24 instances of forgery in the 2 Alabama offices where he worked. Ford officials say White is not credible, that the company investigated and found nothing. But this employee, who worked in a different state, says forgeries happen there, too.
Some offices would forge the customer's name. The customer really didn't even know he had the insurance.
Soon after a Ford customer gets a loan, the company tries to get him to take out an even bigger loan. It's known in the business as flipping. Bennett Roberts of Charlottesville, Virginia, learned about flipping the hard way. All he wanted to do was buy some meat on credit. He ended up with a $50,000 mortgage and almost lost his home. After Roberts bought the meat, an Associates branch manager, Donald McCauley, convinced him to take out a bigger loan at 19% interest to pay off all his debts. Roberts can't read and says when he put his ex on the loan, he didn't realize. He was mortgaging the house he owned free and clear and pledging half his small income. Did Mr. McCauley say anything about maybe that's too much, maybe you're taking on too much?
No, never said anything about it. He just said if you get behind, we'll work it out.
Roberts never had a chance to get behind. 17 days later, before his first payment was due, the Associates flipped him into a new loan. He was flipped again 42 days later, then 26 days after that. Each time he was charged a 10% finance fee.
How about a vacation? Don't you need a vacation?
So you must,
money here for you.
You must have thought, I found my fairy godfather here, huh?
Looked pretty good to me, you know.
The Associates flipped Roberts 11 times in less than 4 years. In the end, he had a $50,000 mortgage, half of which was finance fees. He ended up in the hospital with heart problems. He says were brought on by stress.
I knew I was getting deeper in, but what could I do? I didn't want to live with what I had, didn't want to live with my house.
This man went from borrowing some money so he could buy some meat to fighting for his home. You think Ford helped this guy out?
Mr. Roberts is not a representative loan of the way we do business.
The associates foreclosed on Roberts' house, but he sued. In a settlement, the company forgave his loan and let him stay in his house. And Ford says it has changed its policies to put some controls on flipping. Other people aren't so lucky. We found Ford customers across the country who ended up losing their homes. Ford says their foreclosure rate is less than 2%, in line with the rest of the industry. But critics who track Ford loans say in some areas the rate is much higher. In the Boston area, for instance, they claim it was 11% last year. While Ford's finance companies insist they take someone's home only as a last resort, don't tell that to the people who used to live here in Leominster, Massachusetts. Ernie Munyon grew up in this house, then lived here for the last 10 years with his wife, until they got involved with Ford. The Munyons borrowed from Ford 2 years ago to pay off his father's medical bills. But when they had trouble making the payments, they say the pressure started. How much pressure did you feel?
I was getting very pressured. I was like saying, I'm telling them there's no way I can afford to pay you people.
Finally, their daughter agreed to take over the payments to save their home. They thought the deal was set until they say Ford reneged, demanding too much money up front. So Ford wouldn't allow your daughter,
after saying that she could,
to save this house for the two of you?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that we made every effort to keep the Munyons in their house.
Well, he thinks you made every effort to get them out.
It is not our policy to keep people out of their homes.
Unbelievable.
The Munyons finally signed over the house to Ford. It doesn't show up in the records as a foreclosure.
I love the house. Our last daughter has been raised there, and it's gone.
Customers and former employees told us it happens too often. That if you do business with Ford, keep this in mind.
They're wanting to make as much profit as possible, one person at a time. Get them in the door and keep them.
And their attitude, their regard for their customers?
They're just a number. They're dollar signs.
Does Ford plan to keep doing business the way that it is?
We are very happy with the way we're doing business. We believe we are doing a good thing.
Critics say all the foreclosures and bad loans are having a devastating effect on minority neighborhoods. They plan to ask the federal government to investigate how they say the company takes advantage of working-class people. Meanwhile, Ford's first quarter earnings were announced last week, and business is getting even better. The Associates has made $237 million since the first of the year. That's up 23% over last year's record profits. We'll be right back.